So if you like that progression system and the escalation of power, have I got a game for you. It's this one. Allow me to be as bold as a Spartan kick to the chest. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the best game I played in 2019. I still can't believe that it took me so long to pick it up, but boy am I glad I did. Like Origins before it, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the second mainline Assassin's Creed game that has boldly departed from the franchise's roots, replacing its predecessors with a wide-open world and deep RPG mechanics. And despite how different this game feels from its ancestors, I'm blown away by this massive new entry in the series. With fluid, exciting combat and a world teeming with things to do. Not only is Assassin's Creed Odyssey my new favorite of the franchise, it's one of the best games I've ever played. Hey everybody, Dylan here from the Tech Dork Times, and this is our review of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So first things first, I've been playing Assassin's Creed since the very beginning. Like, when Assassin's Creed 1 was just called Assassin's Creed. And I've loved every single game since then. I did miss a couple entries in the middle though. These games just do such a great job of making you feel like a badass assassin. Assassin! You climb everything, jump off everything, stab the crap out of bad guys, and get to be part of an epic struggle between assassins and Templars. It's the coolest thing ever. And I'm only saying all this because I've watched the series grow over time, so I have a vested interest in the way it moves forward and all of the new mechanics that these games are introducing as they go along. And I know a lot of people have some apprehension with the way these games are moving forward. What was once this sort of semi-open world, more linear experience, but more like an action-adventure type game, has been completely replaced with an RPG game. A full-blown action role-playing game with all the mechanics, whether that's skill trees, there's other stuff too, fully customizable equipment and weapons, branching narratives, dialogue trees. It's all there. This ain't your granddaddy's Assassin's Creed. Unless your granddad's like really cool and hip. Maybe it is. I'm sure he's really cool. So yeah, this may sound like a bit sacrilege to the Assassin's Creed because of how specific the type of game it was back in the day, but I think all of these systems work incredibly well. I loved every second of this game, especially now that you're able to customize the way you do damage, whether that's as an assassin, a warrior, or a hunter, so melee, ranged, or assassin type thing. Bottom line is, Assassin's Creed feels like it was built for these types of systems. But let's break this down a little bit first. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is set in ancient Greece during the middle or back half of a Peloponnesian. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is set in ancient Greece during the Peloponnesian Wars. Yes, that is a hard word to say. It's a time of conflict and uncertainty as the Spartans and Athenians battle for power across the entirety of Greece, and that's where you come in. You play as either Alexios or Cassandra. Cassandra is the better option, and I think she's also canon in the Assassin's Creed universe. Everyone seems to agree she is the better option, though you can choose either one. Regardless of who you choose, you start out as a small-time mercenary working with your friend Marcos, trying to make a living on the small island of Kefalonia. And it is here, obviously, where your journey begins. And what starts out as small-time, crooked businesses, dealings going sour, this quickly evolves into you getting embroiled into a massive conspiracy that involves you and your entire family. That's about all I want to say as far as story is concerned, but rest assured, you have about a 60-hour main campaign story filled with familial, melodramatic family tension and an epic story of revenge, and it's all pretty decent. It's not the best story I've ever played, but it's not half bad. So the first thing that struck me about this game when I started playing was the sheer size of the map. You start off on Kefalonia, as I said, it's a smallish island, but it's not tiny. Like, when you start going around and doing all of the prologue quests and activities, there's plenty of stuff to do, and it actually took me about 6 to 7 hours just to get off of Kefalonia and into the rest of the map. And it's not like this whole thing was just a tutorial section, although it does a really good job of introducing you to a lot of the mechanics that come into play for the rest of the game, but there's all kinds of really cool stuff to do, and it mirrors what you're about to get into in the larger world of ancient Greece. And when you get into that open world, let me tell you, everything opens up. They have also noticeably dialed back all of the whole person sits in the Animus to relive their ancestors' memories sort of thing. It's still there. I think her name's Layla, who is the character that you play as who goes into the Animus, but it's noticeably dialed back, so the story is less convoluted and just more enjoyable overall, in my opinion. But yeah, when you leave the island, the game completely opens up and really starts to introduce you to a lot of the mechanics and systems that are at play in this game, and it becomes immediately obvious this is not like any other Assassin's Creed game. Maybe Origins, but nothing other than that. So first and foremost, the skill trees. I believe that has been a system before in other Assassin's Creed games, but here it really starts to shine because you have RPG mechanics on top of those skill trees. You can choose to specialize in assassination, warrior, or hunter damage trees. These all unlock different abilities and different damage outputs depending on what weapons you choose to use and which ones you want to use. And the abilities you unlock under all of these trees are a blast to use in battle and make you feel like a total monster when you're fighting guys. What I love most about these skill trees is the way they actually influence how you need to play the game. Meaning that if you go through a playthrough focusing only on assassination skills, although that probably won't happen because some of the skills are locked for a bit, so it does sort of force you to hybridize, but if you mostly focus on one skill tree, you'll notice that that requires you to play a certain way. So using assassination as an example, if you're focusing on assassination skills and the skill tree, then that means that when you go into forts and you have to go finish mission objectives, you have to prioritize assassination stuff, so stealthily taking out your targets, because you get huge damage multipliers when you choose to be stealthy and sneak up on guys and use your assassination abilities. That doesn't mean you can't still fight guys one-on-one or even 1v3 or whatever, but it's really, the warrior tree is where most of your skills come from that allow you to do 1v3s or like cool epic stuff like that. And whatever skills you choose, all of these synergize with all of the loot that you find. And all of the loot has different attributes that it boosts, so you can really fine-tune your playstyle based on your equipment and skills that you choose to focus on. And speaking of loot, there is a crazy amount of loot in an Assassin's Creed game. It blew my mind. Everything from weapon sets to armor sets that actually cosmetically change what you look like. And some of the armor sets are really awesome. I'm not going to put any footage of them in this, but when you find some of them, you'll be like, this is like World of Warcraft level. Pretty cool. So yeah, all very RPG style character design and character building. But it works so well in Assassin's Creed, and it's crazy that it's taken this long for the game to move in that direction. Now, the gameplay loop is still somewhat familiar to anyone who's played an Assassin's Creed game before. You need to go to different forts and locations that are guarded by enemies, sneak in, maybe rescue someone, find some intel, or just kill everyone because you're an assassin. But regardless of what you're trying to do when you get to your objective, the loop is really satisfying, but when you add a loot grind on top of that, perfect. That's Greek, right? And that's not even talking about one of my favorite features of this new game. And what is that, you might ask? The Cult of KOSMOS, of course. Duh. The Cult of KOSMOS are the main bad guys in this entry of Assassin's Creed. And what the game developers have done really smartly is they've introduced a whole new section to your inventory, let's say, which is a full hierarchy of the cult. Let me back up for a second. The Cult of KOSMOS is made up of a bunch of different people in ancient Greece across the map. You don't know who they are, but you have this map menu that shows you clues to who each cultist might be. So you can use those to start looking around and poking around and figuring out who different cultists are. And once you figure out who they are, they get highlighted on your map and you can go stabby stab or shooty shoot. You got options is what I'm saying. I found this to be a really awesome side grind, and because it is kind of rooted in a revenge story, it's really satisfying to find these guys, hunt them down, and finish that. So I actually did finish the entire cultist menu and got all of them, and that was a really satisfying grind for me. But if that doesn't sound exciting to you, you don't have to do it. There are a few that you will hunt down just as a result of going through the story, but it's not mandatory that you complete the whole cultist menu. I really like this because some of the older Assassin's Creed games had like a bit of a checklist where you were like, well, I just have to assassinate all of these people to push the story along. But in this case, you don't have to do it, it's just something you can do, and it becomes more enjoyable that way. There is also a full Nemesis type system in the game, and I say Nemesis if you are familiar with Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. Those games implement a system where if an enemy kills you, they move up a rank and get stronger as a result of that. And so Assassin's Creed has introduced its version of that in the form of this mercenary hierarchy. And so there's different tiers to mercenaries, and you're obviously a part of those tiers. But as you kill mercenaries above you, you start to climb in rank and get new rewards and perks as a result of climbing those ranks. And also, when you commit crimes in the game, there's a bounty put on your head and some mercenaries start to hunt you down. And that's kind of a really cool mechanic because you're actively trying to beat these guys anyway, so when they show up at an objective or they're just hunting you down, it might behoove you to fight them to get them off your trail, but also to move up in the tiers of the mercenaries. But also, like in the Cult of KOSMOS menu, you can hunt them down by your own volition and just do that as a side grind as well. You get some pretty cool perks as you move up the tier ranks, but because this is an RPG, there are level limitations to each tier, so you wouldn't be able to get to number 1 at the beginning of the game just simply because their level is so much higher than yours. But it's a cool grind to just, as you move forward through the game, continually climb up. To be honest, I didn't mess much with this system, but I did run into a lot of mercenaries throughout my travels when I got bounties accumulated on my head. And that was a fun system. Like if you're going into a fort trying to kill a bunch of guys or get something but be stealthy, if out of nowhere a mercenary comes charging in looking for you, because they will do that, then it totally complicates your plan and just gives this kind of dynamic feel to every encounter if you have a bounty on your head. Oh, and I almost forgot about conquest battles. These are like mini wars within the canon of the universe. So it makes a lot of sense because you've got the Athenians and the Spartans vying for control of different regions. And so what you can do as an individual throughout the game is you can go to different regions and lower what's called a nation power by liberating forts or burning war supplies. There's all kinds of things you can do. But slowly you'll start to lower that nation power, and once the nation power is low enough, you can initiate a conquest battle. So once the conquest battle becomes available, you can choose to fight for the defenders or the attackers. And if you are the attackers, it's harder, but you get better rewards. If you're the defender, it's easier, but you get worse rewards. I think they would get very repetitive if it's all you did, but to do them every once in a while to get some new like epic gear or whatever, it's a great, awesome, action-packed piece of the game. And yeah, so basically the setup of these conquest battles is each team has a status bar at the top, and you're trying to, by killing commanders on the other team, bring their status bar to 0 before they bring yours to 0. So it's tense and exciting, and it is a bit of a challenge because you do have to move quickly, but it's a lot of fun. I'm also realizing I should just touch on the actual combat a little bit, because this is all great, but is the combat any good? It's a very simple, pretty standard system, but it's done very, very well. You've got your light attack on the right bumper and your heavy attack on the right trigger. Now hold up, I know what you're thinking, that's kind of weird. I was not used to that in a game. Usually it's like A, X, Y, or some combination of those are your light and heavy attacks. This is such a cool system though, although I will say the only criticism I can level against putting your attacks on the bumpers, or the trigger and bumper, is that when you go to play another game it feels very awkward because you've gotten used to this new system, but it does work very well once you become adjusted to it. Also, moving the attacks away from the buttons allows you to use these radial menus for all of your abilities. So you hold the LB button and you can like cycle through your different ability wheels and hit the different buttons and map different abilities to those. I think that's absolutely fantastic because it allows you to use a bunch of abilities in the middle of a real-time battle, and you can mix things up, experiment with stuff. It's a very intuitive system, which makes all of the fights that inevitably will break out so much fun. Really, this game lives and dies by its combat systems, and it's just so good, so simple, but so good, and that's what you want. Overall, the gameplay is definitely the star of the game. It is simple and fun and intuitive, and it allows for multiple playthroughs because you can build different styles of characters and use different abilities and just be a badass in like at least 3 different ways. 3! Really, my only critique of the gameplay itself is that for whatever reason Ubisoft insists on including those synchronization points where you climb up and you perch and you look out and you press a button and it synchronizes everything. It's been reduced now to mostly just a fast travel unlock location, but it also levels up your Eagle's abilities. But it just, there's this animation that you have to sit through, and once you've done it 10 times, it's just brutally long and annoying, and you just want to get back to like jumping off the thing. I want to jump! I want to jump. Very small thing, but it is worth mentioning that that is annoying. And I know I already touched on the story a little bit, but I think it's worth just mentioning that it is not the best story ever, but I found it very serviceable. I found Alexios and Cassandra, because I've played as both of them, to be really great protagonists. It's just there was something missing from the emotional weight of things that happen. Like, there are things that happen that are quite intense and dramatic, but when they happened, something was missing. I don't know if it's just the way the story was told, or the voice acting, or some combination of those things just didn't feel as gripping as it should be. But it's definitely a servable... And despite those shortcomings, it does have multiple endings, which is kind of cool. So there are multiple decisions you make in the game throughout however many chapters there are, and those will impact how the game ends, which is kind of cool. Although I will say, it was pretty easy to figure out which ending... Itchy. I will say it was pretty easy to determine which ending would give you the happiest overall ending. Which choice would give you the happiest ending. So you can go through and kind of just know, oh, if I let this person live, or I kill this person, I know what's going to happen next. Regardless, it's still cool that they added that in. I love when there's a little bit of branching narrative, or at least some opportunity for you as the player to influence the narrative, and that does exist here on the small scale. Just gotta wait for the fan. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Other words. Action. RPG. Excitement. I don't have anything else to say. So it should come as no surprise, I absolutely love this game. This is my favorite Assassin's Creed game. I have played this game for 100 hours across 2 playthroughs, actually over 100 now that I think about it, and I've just barely touched the DLC. So that should give you an idea of how big this game is, and also me being a casual gamer, 100 hours in a game is crazy for me. Like, it has to be freaking awesome for me to spend that much time playing that game. And I did it. I've also heard the DLCs are amazing. What I've played so far is really, really good and seemed totally on brand with everything that's already come before it. So if you like the game, the DLCs look like they're going to be amazing as well. But as much as I love this game, let's talk about who should buy it and who should skip. Anyone who loves RPGs in general has to play this game. If you have not tried it, don't let the Assassin's Creed name fool you into thinking it's not a full-blown RPG, because it absolutely is. The loot grind, the combat, and hours of things to do make this an essential purchase for any fan of RPGs. Also, if you like games like Arkham Knight or Shadow of Mordor, or any like combat-focused game that isn't a Soulsborne game, because those are a little bit challenging, but if you like games that make you feel like a superhero while not being super challenging, but still offering a challenge, if that makes sense at all. And if you just like the feeling of a power escalation in a game, like feeling the weight and difference that different weapons and scaling up your level makes to how you fight other guys, and how good you are at what you do, this is a great game for that. By the end of the game, you feel like a total monster, like a superhero. It is like a superhero game, it just starts out a little bit slower than that. But once you get to the end, it's like you're a god. So if you like that progression system and the escalation of power, if I got a game for you, it's this one. And in saying that, I would say you should probably skip this game if you're looking for a really challenging combat. This is not a Soulsborne game by any means. So anyone hoping for that level of combat challenge and maybe even like boss fights, there's not a ton of boss fights in this, there are a few. So yeah, it's not enough of a challenge if that's what you're used to or that's what you're hoping to get into. Also, if you hate loot grinds, it's not like this is a crazy grindy game. But it is important to stay viable in the game that you make sure you're gearing up properly and you're getting your skills and you're paying attention to how you build your character. You can definitely still enjoy other parts of the game without having to focus too much on the RPG elements of building a character, but it is important, and you'll find that you struggle through the game if you don't pay at least a little bit of attention to that. So if that's not your thing or your grind, this ain't it. And finally, if you are a story-first kind of gamer, I don't recommend Assassin's Creed Odyssey, not because the story isn't decent, it's just if story is your bread and butter and you play games almost like you watch movies or read books, you're going to be a little let down by this. I'm giving Assassin's Creed Odyssey a 9.1 out of 10 for a fantastic action RPG adventure through a beautiful reimagining of ancient Greece. Though it doesn't have the best or most gripping story out there, its combat and RPG mechanics are the star of the show and provide at least 100 hours of assassin badassery. That's it for this video. If you liked this review, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for reviews on all the big games and indie darlings that you can't miss. Nailed it. And keep an eye out for the first Tech Dork Trial, a new segment where I will be filming myself playing a new game for the first time and giving my honest first impressions. Until next time, stay safe and, as always, stay dorky.